What if lasting happiness wasn't something to chase, but something you could grow from within, starting with just 10 minutes a day? Monique Rhodes is living proof that a joyful, peaceful life is possible, no matter where you start. Get ready for an inspiring, down to earth chat that might just change the way you think about your mind. Welcome to Happiness on Tap, where we bring you inspiring stories and practical insights for a happier, more fulfilling life. Your go-to podcast for uplifting conversations that stir the heart and ignite the spirit. I'm your host, Leann, and today I am sitting down with someone who resonates the kind of grounded joy we are all craving. Monique Rhodes. She is a happiness specialist who's helped people around the world, from stressed out students to global organizations, discover how to rewrite their thinking and cultivate happiness that lasts. And let me tell you, Monique has lived a life most of us only dream about. She's motorbiked the length of India solo, performed for royalty and rock legends, and even worked on a musical project with the Dalai Lama himself. But that's not what's most extraordinary. It's about how she has taken all of those experiences and turned them into wisdom and practical tools that anyone, yes, anyone, even the busiest among us, can use to feel more empowered, more peaceful, and more alive. So grab a cup of something cozy and let's settle in for a conversation that might just shift something big inside of you. Monique, welcome to the show. It is such a pleasure to have you with us.
It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Leann.
We're going to get started right away. So you have lived such a wildly adventurous life. How did all of that shape your relationship with happiness?
Well, I always have this idea that if you light a candle, the only way that you can see the light of the candle is if you have the darkness to reflect it. And for me, actually, my story starts in the darkness. And that has been such an important part of my understanding of how to help people be happier. So the brief, easy story to explain to you, Leann, is that I was born in New Zealand, which is a wonderful country, and I was adopted into a very, very bad situation. And I think all through my teenage years, I was suffering from stress and anxiety and depression. And at the age of 19, I ended up in hospital having tried to take my own life. And I really asked myself a question in that hospital bed. And the question I asked myself was, why does everybody else seem to be okay? And why is it that I'm struggling so much? And is there a way that I can shift my happiness levels, which at that time, of course, were at rock bottom? And I wanted to see if I could understand this, because I thought maybe there was something wrong with me. Maybe there was something not wrong with everybody else. And so through that despair that I know so many people feel, I'm not the only person to have a traumatic childhood, or I'm not the only person who has suffered immensely in their lives. Through that, I then went on a quest and a mission to see if I could turn my happiness around. And it took me a long, long time. I traveled all over the world, and I studied and I read and I learned from all sorts of different people. But eventually I began to find the things that could make a shift. And I always say now I'm annoyingly happy, because I think that my happiness levels are at a level that I didn't even know was possible when I first went on this mission to turn my life around.
Thank you so much for sharing your story and what got you there. Just a quick side note, I can relate. I was adopted into a bad situation. Unfortunately, I really didn't realize the damage that all of that, plus a childhood of abuse, had done to my body until I was in my early 40s, and it all decided to come out at one time. And that's when I had to start questing and learning and getting educated. Um, the rest of the time, I just spent kind of pushing it down and struggling through. And so I really love your story and the things that you did to change your future and to learn what you could do. What was, and I obviously you had many personal turning points, but when did you realize that happiness wasn't something outside of us, but
Mm.
actually something that we cultivate from within?
Leann, I remember I was about 20 years old and I went to Thailand for the first time. And I remember being in Thailand, going down these canals in a boat with my very good friend. And I remember looking out and seeing a man under 4 sticks of bamboo and a tarpaulin. And I remember he was just sitting there cross-legged with a few little belongings beside him. I remember looking at him and seeing unbelievable happiness as he smiled at us. Like it was so clear and it was so pure. And this was a very, very big moment for me because it was the first time I'd been in a third world country. And I remember looking at him and thinking, wait a second, how is this possible? How is this man who has none of the things that I've been led to believe are going to lead me to being happy? How does he seem to own this happiness and not own any of the bells and whistles that I was led to believe should be making him happy? So that was my first aha moment, that perhaps it wasn't what I'd been told.
And that is a great example of realizing that sometimes we are surrounded by so much that we believe because we've been told or our beliefs have been handed down to us that these things will make you happy. If you have a good career, if you have this in your marriage, if you have children, if you have this, all these things, if you have money, and getting to where you can look at someone and see their happiness resonating out of them when they are sitting with so little in their possessions. That had to really truly be a transformational aha moment.
Yes.
You talk about rewiring the mind. What does that really mean for somebody who is stuck in stress, self doubt, burnout?
I think one of the biggest things to understand is that everything that you do, whether you go through the world and you're full of joy and delight about the world, or whether you go through the world with stress and anxiety and depression, it's really important to understand that most of your experience is habitual. So, whatever it is that you're doing, you have been practicing it. And this is a really empowering idea to really get a grip on and really understand, because what it means is that if the way that I am in the world is deeply habitual, and most of us are not aware that we are, then if I can change the way that I am in the world habitually, then I can change my whole life. And that's what I learned. It was that I was just full of a whole bunch of habits. And listen, habits are really helpful. They're helpful in the way that when I wake up in the morning, I don't want to relearn how to tie my tennis shoes when I'm going to go and play tennis. And I don't want to relearn every day how to drive the car. That would be super problematic. So habits are shortcuts that help us to be able to function efficiently in the world. But the problem is that so many habits that we have are unconscious, And so many of them don't help us. And so one of the first things we have to become aware is to bring our habitual ways of being in the world into consciousness so that we can start to see, I do a whole bunch of things merely out of habit. Let me give you an example because I know this can be a little bit hard to understand. Let me find something here on my desk and give you an example of it, right? I'm going to explain to you the 8 levels of consciousness. So I want to show you something right there. It's just a little vase thing that I got in Mexico a few months ago. So what happens is that the first 5 levels of our consciousness are our senses. So one of my senses, which is sight, picks this up and sees it. And then the 6th consciousness recognizes it and says, this is a vase. And the 7th consciousness then says, I like it, I don't like it, or I feel neutral about it. And then the 8th consciousness files it. So what happens is that you see this vase, and based on past experience, you have the response of I like it, I don't like it, or I'm neutral about it. You think in the moment you're choosing it. But when I show you this vase, you might have a response of, oh, I like that because I love that orange color. Or I went to Mexico too, I like it. Or I don't like it because my grandmother had a vase like that and she was really mean to me. And so what's happening is the habitual mind is filing things really quickly from the 8th consciousness, which holds everything. And it's making decisions for you all day. I'll give you a great example. You go into a restaurant and the person who is your waitress her name's Stacy. And instantly you go, I had a girl who cheated on my boyfriend years ago. Her name was Stacy. I don't like people called Stacy. And the wall goes up. Or you go, oh, my sister's name's Stacy. And suddenly you're wide open to that person. I remember some years ago, I was in California at a winery, and there was a woman there from Montana. This was just before COVID. And she said to me, after 20 minutes of talking to me, I really want you to come and stay on my ranch with me in Montana, which I was fully intending to do, except that COVID happened. And I asked her at the time, why is it? I already knew the answer, but I wanted just to see what the circumstance was. Why is it that after 20 minutes of meeting me, you've decided that you want to invite me to your ranch? You don't even know me. And she said, because you remind me so much of my sister. And my sister died 8 years ago, and I miss her so much. So that habitual habit in the mind of taking pieces of my personality and recognizing them as being similar to her sister meant that she opened widely to me with limited information. And this is what we're doing all of the day, all of the time. And it's a really important thing for us to understand. When we first started this interview, Leann, for people who are watching or listening to this, you will have had a I like her, I don't like her, or I feel neutral response to her based on the way I look, based on the sound of my voice, based on my New Zealand accent, which more than likely you went, oh my God, what a delightful accent. I've got to listen to this podcast, right? So we think we're going through our days choosing responses to things, but most of the time we are unconsciously responding based on past experiences. And so this is really important when we get ourselves caught in a cycle of stress and anxiety. We start to make that our default response. And for someone like me who doesn't experience stress and anxiety in the same way that most people do, my default response to stress and anxiety is quite different from most other people's. So I have a very calm mind. I have an ability when stressful situations arise to not run off and spiral, but to stay very pragmatic and very calm within them. And I've been tested with this a couple of years ago. I had 2 illnesses in short succession that I almost died from one, and the second one was a cancer diagnosis. And I stayed absolutely well through the whole experience. And I have to say, I'm 100% well now. And I did it because of the habitual ways that I deal with my mind and myself. My mind is completely rewired to deal with the world a little bit differently from what most people do. And Leann, I think it's so important because when we look at our world today, the levels of stress and anxiety and depression have gone through the roof. So I know that what most people are doing doesn't work. And so to swim upstream, to do things differently to get a different result becomes absolutely vital. That was a long-winded answer to your question, but I hope that's helpful.
Oh, very much so. Thank you for sharing the different scenarios and things, because I think it really helps people understand what we are doing um, automatically in our day. Like you said, the remembering to tie our shoes, how to drive a car, that's our autonomic nervous system doing things that it's been programmed to do, the habits that we've developed. But I love that you share one, that it is possible to rewire our mind, because that is really important for people to know, especially people who are trapped in that anxiety and that stress and can't really see the way out, or that there is a way out or a way through, and that we can control that ability. Like you said, just being able to be calm in the chaos and know what you can and cannot control, and know that if you went down one path, you may have one outcome. So if at the time when you received your cancer diagnosis, you went into the negative state, that can fuel the negative outcome in a way that your body is now experiencing more negative things happening at one time, because you're kind of stuck there. But, being able to really rewire, and thank you again too for walking the 8 levels of consciousness. That was so totally helpful, to see where we can slow down in our day and pay attention and be present in the moment, and stop and smell the flower that just bloomed outside your door, instead of walking right past it and getting in your car and being in a hurry to rush off. So thank you for kind of going through the different levels of consciousness and the examples that you shared. I think all of that was such a great example of what is possible for people. You created, and I love this, the 10-minute mind for people who think they can't meditate. I used to be one of those people until I made it a priority for myself. Why do you think so many people feel like meditation just isn't for them?
It's a great question. I think it's because they don't understand what it is, and they don't understand why they should do it, and they don't understand how to do it. Meditation is very much like a bicep curl. It's very, very, very simple, and so simple that it's not the easiest thing to do. But this is it in its simplest form. Your mind wanders off into another place. So your mind is only able to be in 3 places: the present, the future, or the past. It's in one of those places. Now, if we think about it, the past is really imaginary. Like, Leann, if you and I sat at the end of this interview and asked each other about different aspects of what we discussed, you're going to remember certain things. I'm going to remember certain things. So when we think about it, our mind is constantly filtering in a very particular way. So the past is really a fantasy. Your little fantasy and my little fantasy. That's why, in crime scenes where people are in the same place and they have completely different remembering of the person who was the criminal. So the past is a fantasy. The future hasn't happened yet, so that too is a fantasy. So the most important place that we can keep ourselves is the present, because we're often running off into the future into catastrophic scenarios, worrying scenarios, trying to figure things out, trying to control things, things that very rarely ever happen. Like if I was to say to you, Leann, I want you to tell me in exactly 5 minutes what's going to happen, you would not be able to. And I wouldn't be able to either. So thinking about the future, thinking about that fantasy of the future becomes absolutely pointless because there's no way that we can anticipate it. So the most powerful place that we can stay is the present moment, because in the present moment, you just have right this minute. So if while I was sitting here talking to you, I started thinking about, oh my God, I'm going to the gym after this, and I wonder how I'm going to get the dog to the bathroom before I go. And can my dog go to my friend's house because I've got a dinner to go to afterwards? And, who's going to be there? And how am I going to have clothes for dinner when I've just been to the gym? All of these things that our mind runs off into. If I was doing that while I was talking to you, which most people are doing while they're having a conversation, my mind would be so scattered and so anxious that it wouldn't be possible for me to stay calm and grounded. Instead, Leann, while I'm talking to you, I am talking to you. So I'm just here, just having conversation with you. And that becomes really an important thing. So the most important place I can be in is just this present moment, because it's the only moment that exists. I don't know what's going to happen in 30 seconds, let alone 5 minutes, let alone 1 hour. So meditation is the art of learning how really it's almost like you've got this fishing rod and your mind runs off and you bring it back to the present moment. It runs off, you bring it back to the present moment. It runs off, you bring it back to the present moment. That is essentially what meditation is. So very much like a bicep curl. I lift that weight and my muscle gets stronger. If I can teach you to build that muscle of staying more and more in the present moment, then a natural thing that happens is your stress and anxiety begin to dissolve. Because instead of being here and thinking about the past and thinking about the future, where your mind is under so much stress, you're just here. And so understanding that can be a huge motivator for us. And lots of people teach meditation all sorts of creative ways. But the true way is just to bring your mind home, back to yourself over and over again, and to extend those periods of time. What happens then, Leann, is that whenever your mind goes off and you bring it back, you're starting to learn to slow all those reactions down. So if I'm at home and I have a partner and my partner says something that triggers me, all of a sudden I start to recognize that between that trigger and my response, there's a gap. And what meditation does is it teaches me to get to know myself, to learn what are those things that trigger me. What are my habitual emotional states? What are my habitual thought states? And to slow down my response time. I mean, at the moment, most people's response time are a little bit like you've got a mobile phone and you've got it turned off and someone calls you, it goes straight to voicemail. That is how fast we respond. But I want to teach you to have 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings, 4 rings, 5 rings before you respond rather than react. And the other wonderful thing about meditation is it teaches you to get to know yourself. And, there's so many people that I work with that do not have a good relationship with themselves. That's a little bit like being in a prison cell with a crazy person, right? Nobody would wish that on themselves, all right? But imagine if you were in a prison cell, not even a prison cell. I think if you don't have this, you're out of jail. What if you were in an existence where you were constantly with your best friend? That's what meditation taught me, was how to become my own best friend. So I don't have those loops of, you're this, you're that, you didn't do this well or anything. I've got this constant cheerleader in my mind helping me, supporting me, picking me up, cheering me on, because I've got to know myself so unbelievably well through the art of meditation. So meditation is really a superpower. And the most important thing is that you learn it. You learn it from someone who is teaching that ancient technique. Bring your mind back. Someone that you like, you can learn from me, you can learn from someone else. The main thing is that you do it consistently. And the studies that I did with one of the top universities in the world, University College London, where the 10-minute mind was first introduced about 8 years ago, was that we did a whole bunch of studies there, and we found that in 10 minutes a day with the 10-minute mind, we could have a massive effect on the well-being of all the people, the students and the staff that we tested at this college.
God, you covered a lot of wonderful information. And it was probably 5 years ago when I learned how to meditate. And I did it through kind of trying to find somebody that I connected with, that resonated with me, and that I could follow. I kind of do well in a guided situation. And the very first thing, I learned was that coming back to myself. So it was a visualization, and how she taught it was like when you're a kid and you're laying in the grass flat on your back and you're watching the clouds go by. Your thoughts are like those clouds. They're going to come and they're going to go. And being able to let them go and not focus on them, not try to see the animal shape, or is there darkness in the clouds, or are they light and fluffy, but just to let it go and be able to come back to my breath, come back to myself. And as I continued to improve my meditation practice and be able to sit longer and learn about myself and learn so much about my ability to be able to sit with myself and be present, I also learned to be grateful to my body that could hold me in a state while I was able to go off on these journeys and learn more about myself without me falling over, or, it was such a powerful tool to learn and develop. And then as I started teaching it to others, I had a women's circle for a brief period of time, for like a year. The ladies would first arrive and we'd get ready to have our guided meditation. And I would always see where they were. I didn't want to make a decision based on each individual person and where they were in their day, and were they open to a shorter meditation or a longer meditation. In the beginning, it was very, very short meditations. But as we developed it each week, it became longer and longer and longer, to where there wasn't even a question in the room about what they were needing, because they were bringing that with them when they arrived, and just the joy of what they had developed in their own practice at home, and how it had changed their relationships and their reactions, like you talked about. I think that is really something that I developed, being present in everything I do, from washing the dishes to responding to a conversation with my husband or a friend or my daughter who calls, but taking that time to not just react, but respond in a way that's intentional and mindful and within my values. And just, it is such a valuable tool. So thank you so much for sharing that, and for sharing that people can come to you and they can learn about the 10-minute mind and what it means to have 10 minutes of stillness in your day. What kind of shifts have you seen in people, like I was saying, when they commit to it?
Well, I mean, I teach happiness, people how to be happy on a broader scale. So I'm going to talk to it from that perspective. Is that I have a lot of people come to me with huge amounts of stress and anxiety and depression, and and I see them I see they lose weight. I see that their relationship with their partners transforms, because if you want to shift something in your relationship or your marriage, then shifting yourself is one of the most powerful things you can do. I've seen people change jobs and go on to do exactly what it is that they want to do. I think the biggest thing that I teach people is possibility. That, I've lived a very big life, and it's the life that I wanted. And it's been a really extraordinary life. There's so much that I've done, but it wasn't because it just happened. Like I consciously created the life that I wanted for myself. And we all get to do that. And so if I can teach people how to move out of the unconscious into consciously creating that life for themselves, then everything can change. And there's just so many people I work with who can't believe the shifts in their life because they thought they were doing okay, but now they're thriving.
Yeah, that is a great point, is helping people not only see the possibility, but they also witness it through us, through our stories, through what we've experienced and gone through. But my favorite point of my day and every day is that I get to choose who I surround myself with, what is around me, what I want in my future, in my life. And so showing people not only that they can and help them see their possibility, but that they get to understand that they get to. They get to choose, they get to make those changes, that we're not stuck in a certain place in our life, that we are capable of change. You taught at over 70 universities. I love looking at your website. I had so much fun just really researching your story and all the things that you have done. How does your work meet people where they are?
I'm not quite sure I know what you're looking for there. Tell me a little bit what you mean by that.
Well, okay, so you're going into
Because my aim is always to meet people where they are, but just
so
help me
like
understand specifically.
in a group situation, when you're teaching to a large group of people, is there something that resonates with you where you have like a clean starting point, I guess? Or I don't know, I guess I can't think of exactly how I want to describe that, because my goal is to always meet people where they are. But I guess my question is more of like a group setting. I don't do any group coaching. Everything I do is one-on-one.
So how do I meet a group where they're at?
Yeah, I guess. I kind of got lost in how I wanted to think about that question.
That's all right. I can give you an answer to that. And the answer is that everybody fundamentally is suffering in the same way. So there is no special, magical kind of thing that one person is having. Their circumstances may be slightly different from mine. The story might be slightly different, but really it is all the suffering of our mind. And so with empathy and understanding of that, it's very easy to meet everybody where they are, because really we're all suffering from the same issue. You know, that's it. Is that and what is that issue? That issue is our belief that we are separate from each other. And so understanding that means that it's possible, hopefully, to meet everybody where they're at.
Actually, that was the perfect answer. That was the perfect answer to my very convoluted question. Um, because, yeah, I think we're in a time now where people are treated as a whole and not as individuals, but our experiences, while they may be different, come down to, our core fears or core beliefs. And so that empowers us to be able to have that empathy, that compassion, to be able to meet them exactly where they are.
I think what I mean by separation, though, is you have an image of the Buddha behind you, and in Eastern philosophical terms, in Buddhist terms, the belief would be that, and I'll talk also in Christian terminology to make it accessible for anybody who's Christian who might go, "Ooh, I don't want to talk about Buddhism." But the belief in Buddhism is that God is in you. We are God. God isn't separate from us. And that is the source of our suffering, is the belief that we are separate, that we don't have that perfect enlightened nature. And so when you talk about your person doing this reflection on the clouds, it's like we are already enough. We are already perfect. The only thing that obscures our understanding that God is in us, or that we have Buddha nature, if we're talking in Buddhist terms, is the belief that is the separation that's created by the obscurations of our mind, which is why working with the mind becomes the absolute biggest priority. Because if we can clear the obscurations of the mind, then we open to our perfect nature, and we open to the fact that I have perfect nature, you have perfect nature. Someone who's acting out in the most terrible ways also has the seed of perfect nature in them as well. But for whatever reason, their habitual patterns of their mind is obscuring it. And that is the cause of our suffering, is not recognizing that we are all actually filled with God, filled with love, filled with that perfect nature of whatever it is we believe the Creator is. And that is a really vital thing for us to understand, because that belief in our own separateness is what creates all of our issues. I mean, you look at the United States, or you look at countries where certain people are put in terrible circumstances and all sorts of terrible things happen to them. That is merely an example of people believing that they're separate. And so that is the cause of our suffering.
Oh, wow, you definitely sparked some thoughts in my mind on that. Thank you so much. Because that is, thank you. I'm going to have to just sit in that for a minute, and I'm going to enjoy going back and replaying what you just said to really help it sink in. And I hope others will do the same, find something that really truly resonates with them out of this beautiful conversation, and go back and replay it and share it. And I know that you have a podcast as well, and it's like bite-sized daily rituals. What inspired you to start it, and how do you keep showing up with that kind of clarity and intention every day?
Oh, well, I was just inspired because it was what people were needing, was that they wanted me to teach. And the reason that I keep doing it is because every day I'm studying, learning, growing, and working with my students and understanding different aspects of what they need. So for what one person might need, I always feel that other people will benefit from it. So I use it as a really easy way to have a teaching platform.
Oh, I love that. I think for me, when I created my podcast, it was to bring together people in different countries, different situations, different education, that are all here with their stories to share either a part of them and their experience, or their education and how they help people. So I can bring them together here on the platform and share them with others, so that people can learn that they're not alone, that there are people out there in the world who can help them, that there are lots and lots of avenues for education that we didn't used to have. Podcasts and just technology that we didn't used to have back in, the 80s or the 70s. Now we have all this wonderful education at our fingertips, and yet we still struggle with finding education or information. And I think when I bring people on the podcast, I know that there's going to be at least one person who's going to hear that conversation and take something from it. And hopefully they will then in turn share it with somebody else that they know and they love. So, thank you for what you do and the purpose that you put behind your episodes. I think it's something people, I want to make sure and get that information in the show notes so that people can find your podcast and check it out and start learning something new every day, because I think that's what our goal is to keep going and growing and learning. And if we can do that in short bite-sized pieces and then put that into action, then we're better off. I want to make sure we catch your time. Let me think. There was more I wanted to really. We imagine a world where people wake up excited about their lives. I know that I wake up every morning excited about what I get to do. I wake up with gratitude, thankful for what I have. I take time to have my daily meditation, to eat a healthy breakfast, to spend time in nature. What would it take for individuals or us collectively to move closer to that we seek, that where people wake up excited about their life?
I think the first thing is that people have to accept that life is unbelievably difficult and full of suffering. And to understand that on a deep level is really powerful, because when we're constantly chasing that excitement, we often are doing everything to stay away from the more difficult aspects of the human existence. And so that creates problems for us because we become attached to everything being amazing and wonderful. And actually, the art of being happy is about experiencing the whole human experience: grief, sadness, anger, disappointment, frustration, as well as all of the most beautiful things. And to be able to hold those in conjunction with each other, to understand that you can't see the light without the darkness, that the darkness isn't your enemy, it's just a part of your human existence. And to not get too attached to feeling great, and to not get too attached to feeling miserable, but just to see it all as a beautiful part of the kaleidoscope. And in doing that and allowing yourself to feel and be truly alive, and to be present in every moment if you possibly can, then life takes on a whole different experience.
It truly does. It truly does. Can you talk just a little about all your different offerings? I'm going to make sure to include your website and your podcast information, but just so people know what all they can learn and benefit from working with you.
I think the most powerful course that I would love people to investigate is called the Happiness Baseline. And this is an incredible course. We've done a series of studies on it. And we put people through the Penn State University Happiness Inventory at the beginning and at the end. And we have a 100% success rate with every single person who's gone through that course and completed it. Our completion rates are extremely high, who have increased their happiness level on that test. And it's very thorough. It goes through, it's an 8-week online course, and it teaches you basically very quickly over 8 weeks how to dramatically increase your happiness levels. So I think that's the course if I was to direct anyone to it. Meditation's included in it, but it's really powerful. And you just need a few minutes a day to work on it. There's some videos to watch, some exercises to do, most importantly, it works. And that's all I'm interested in, is taking all my years of figuring this stuff out and giving you things that work. But that would be the course I would encourage you to check out.
Ooh, and I looked over it just briefly, but now I'm going to definitely go back and look at it some more. And I will include it, a link to it in the show notes as
Thank you.
well. I think that it's wonderful that it's, I'm very much a self-paced learner. I like to learn and immediately put things into action. So like you said, there's videos, and then there's the action steps for you to do to make those changes. And that, I think, is what helps people keep moving forward, is when you get that taste, then you want more. You want to show up the next day. You want to learn more. You want to experience more. So thank you for putting together something so comprehensive in a short 8-week course. I think that's going to be very helpful for people. Monique, thank you so much for pouring your peace and your joy into this conversation today and bringing such insight into so many things that we discussed. Your wisdom feels like a gentle invitation back to ourselves, and a reminder that happiness doesn't have to be complicated or far away. And for our listeners, if this conversation stirred something within you, check out Monique's daily podcast, In Your Right Mind, and take a look at her 10-minute mind program. Make sure you check out the Happiness Baseline course. You might just find the happiness that you have been seeking that is already waiting for you. And until next time, keep your heart open, your mind kind, and your happiness on tap. Monique, is there any one last thing that you want to leave our audience with?
I think that I would like everyone to know that the place that I've got to in my own life is not because I'm particularly intelligent or clever or anything like that. It's just that I found a path, and that's a path that anyone can walk. And I want everybody to know that to have a really strong level of happiness is something that's accessible to all of us. We just need to find the right person to show us the way. So don't ever feel discouraged. There's always a way through. And I hope that if you're listening and you're worried about how you're feeling at the moment, that you'll find some comfort in that.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for your time with me today. I appreciate you coming on my podcast. And I look forward to looking more into the programs that you offer, and sharing them with my listeners, with my subscribers. Thank you for being a part of Synergy and, accepting my invitation to come on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Leann, for having me. I appreciate it too.
You have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you, Leann. Take care.
Take care.